And now we have our next speaker is Aoife Feeney. And many of you know Aoife from her role with Carbery, managing the ASIP programme down in West Cork. And not only has Aoife got great expertise in the area of water quality, but as part of her 2022 Nuffield, she's looking at ways to influence behavioural change at farm level to improve water quality. And currently, Aoife works as an agricultural policy officer with the Embassy of the Netherlands. And she gives a really unique perspective on the topic of water quality. So thanks ever so much, Aoife.
Thanks, Gillian, and thanks to the Positive Farmers Conference for having me here today. So you're probably wondering why an agricultural policy officer from the Netherlands is standing here. So I suppose my experience over the last 6 years, particularly the last 4 years of my career, were in managing the water quality programme for Carbery. And I suppose dealing with farmers on the ground to try and prioritise action for this issue. Water quality has become an increasing issue for Ireland over the last number of years, as it has been for the Netherlands for quite some time as well. I suppose my Nuffield scholarship, I just started it this year, and I'm travelling all across the world to look at what we can do and how we can prioritise action for water quality, because it's such an issue here in Ireland. But I suppose, as Dara gave an overview of policy for biodiversity, I want to give the same for water here in Ireland and the EU. So I'm not sure what's wrong with this. I'll go with this way. Okay. So looking at water quality and the overarching policy from an EU perspective, the EU Water Framework Directive, I suppose, was established to protect and improve water quality and water availability across all of Europe. It set targets for 2027 in which all member states must achieve at least good or high ecological status across all water bodies. So that's a pretty ambitious target that we have to achieve. Within the Water Framework Directive, each member state is obliged to establish a river basin management plan. So every number of years, each country has to submit their river basin management plan. For Ireland, we're a little bit unique in that the fact that we're an island, we only share a river basin management plan with Northern Ireland, which makes it a little bit easier for us to control as a nation, but also means that we have to have close collaboration with the Northern Ireland Department of Agriculture also, and also for the Ministry looking after water quality. Within the RBMP, we look at mapping, monitoring and a programme of measures. So in 2017, the key programme of measures that was established in Ireland was the Agricultural Sustainability Support and Advisory Programme. It's quite a mouthful. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it now. And ASIP was set up in order to protect and enhance water quality at farm level specifically. The other key policy that we have to look at under the Water Framework Directive is the Nitrates Directive. And I suppose I've put in the key objective here because it's important to remember that the Nitrates Directive was put in place to protect water quality across Europe and prevent nitrates from agricultural use specifically that could pollute surface waters, and to promote the good use of farming practices. So to bring that back to Ireland and to look at where we are currently in our water quality. So just before Christmas in October, we had our latest EPA water quality report. And I suppose the water quality report isn't overly positive still 4 years into the ASIP programme. So currently we have 54% of our water bodies. That includes our rivers, lakes, estuaries and coastal water bodies and our groundwater supply. 54% is at satisfactory condition. So we still have 46% of water bodies unsatisfactory that have to be at good or high ecological status by 2027. So that's 2 years to improve all of those water bodies, which is an enormous task. When we look at our Nitrates Directive, and within that we have our nitrates derogation, which focuses on trends, the trends have been declining, and we haven't seen an upward turn in trends since 2015. The largest decline has been in our estuary and coastal bodies over the last number of years, so from 2016 to 2021. And our estuaries, I suppose the biggest change there has been the increase in nitrate levels specifically. When we look at our highest level of high status water bodies, you can see there on the west coast of Ireland, they're predominantly located in the west and southwest of Ireland. Whereas when we look at our highest level of nitrate concentration and the reduction in water quality, we're looking at the east and southeast. Now, it doesn't say that it's directly correlated with stocking rates or nitrogen intensity. It's more associated with soil type and land use as well. So it's important, I suppose, to remember that it's not directly related to the farming type, and that soil type and land is really important here as well. So when we look then at the issues surrounding this, what are the main problems when it comes to water quality in Ireland? Dara already stated that land use is predominantly used for agriculture in this country, so nutrient runoff, sediment and pesticides are our #1 problem when it comes to water quality. 63% of the pressures in our water quality is from agriculture and a further 14% from forestry. Nutrient runoff and sediment is a huge issue across all farming areas, but particularly for the west it focuses on phosphorus, and for the southwest you're looking more so at nitrogen. Land drainage is also an issue, particularly in some of the peatlands, and dredging and culverts are also issues across other parts of the country. We also have issues with urban wastewater, and we have issues with stormwater and management systems in urban areas, but today we're focusing on agriculture, and we're all aware that agriculture isn't the only culprit, but we can focus on what we can do to achieve, I suppose, higher status in our own areas. What's the impact of this then if we're looking at agricultural policy? So when we've more pressures, there's going to be more requirements for protection, which means changes in policy, similar to biodiversity. So when we look at the nitrates derogation and those downward trends, we're looking at more requirements for more protective measures. We're currently the third EU country to still have a nitrates derogation, along with Denmark and along with Belgium. The Netherlands have currently lost theirs. They're in the process of reducing back to 170 kilos of nitrogen by 2025. So being granted a nitrates derogation, I suppose, is almost like a special request for Ireland to the EU. And if we keep going with our trends in the way we are, the likelihood of us continuing to get that derogation into the next coming years is going to get tighter and tighter. It's going to be harder for us to go back to the EU and ask, can we have a derogation? So it's really important to remember that this is directly correlated with our water quality, with our trends and that downward trajectory. But it's not all bad. So what are the positives, I suppose, for water quality in agriculture in Ireland? Since its foundation in 2018, the ASSET programme has shown, I suppose, huge strides in not only putting water quality at the forefront of farming, but also in showing that improvements can be made where farmers prioritise action and where they get involved with a programme. So under the RBMP, the first tranche of the programme was launched in 2018 with 190 areas for action, and all of the co-ops across the country got involved with this along with Teagasc. Advisors were trained specifically to work with farmers on the ground to give targeted advice, support and to try and encourage farmers to prioritise actions. So many improvements were made in PAAs as a result of this. I suppose the latest data from the EPA is showing that the improvements in water quality have been predominantly in priority areas for action. And that shows that taking action, especially for agriculture, we will see improvements, but depending on where you are, it's very timely. So the sooner we get on board with it, the quicker we're going to see it. Further positives to this is that the ASSET programme has been scaled up over the last number of years. So I know that the co-ops have hired more staff. Teagasc have put a lot of focus into the programme. And just before Christmas, some funding was announced by the department for targeted EIP programmes that will focus on water quality measures. So I think that's open at the moment for application. So we are looking at a turnaround similar to biodiversity in, I suppose, prioritising actions that will benefit water quality. They will more than likely benefit biodiversity, but they'll also benefit you in that the actions you can take will improve profitability in many regards as well. So I suppose just looking at some actions that can be avoided and some actions that can be taken from my past experience and my previous role. This, I suppose, is from my own experience. It's not representative of the national programme, but some of the most common issues that I would have come across were to do with farmyard management, specifically silage effluent. So, even just checking when the yard is empty, when your silage slabs are empty, are your channels clean? Are you cleaning out the channels regularly? Silage effluent is so potent, it can have a major effect on water quality very quickly. And particularly in the shoulders of the year when we tend to have a lot more storm water, a lot higher rainfall, you could get some effluent running off across the yard and it could be ending up in a clean drain very quickly. It's a small action that can have a huge reward, I suppose, if every farmer takes action and looks at their yard and prioritises checking it once or twice a year to make sure that, you know, everything is okay in their own yard, then that's when you start to see improvements. The catchments programme, or the catchment-based approach, I suppose, under the ASSEP programme, the reason for that is that when we scale it down to small base catchments, we tend to get better improvements because we can look at the specific issues within each catchment. And with actions like this, it's every farmer doing a small bit is what's going to get us a bigger improvement in an entire catchment, rather than one farmer doing everything that's asked of them. We might not see any improvement in the catchment. So, you know, have a look at what catchment you're in. If you're in a priority area for action, can you get involved with the ASSEP programme? And if you're not, what actions can you take currently at your own farm that will still have an improvement on water quality and maybe not cost too much as well? One of the other issues, I suppose, that we often come across is when it comes to the spreading of organic manure and also chemical fertiliser and adhering to buffer zones. So these pictures are from Teagasc, but you can see on the bottom left-hand side there, we've got our 5-metre buffer zone. And I suppose more often than not, in my previous experience, some issues were coming, again, particularly at the shoulders of the year, where buffer zones weren't adhered to, or perhaps there was a drain that wasn't necessarily a watercourse, but would have been feeding into a watercourse eventually. And organic matter was getting in through those drains. So looking at those pathways on each farm, you don't have to have rivers on your farm to have an impact on water quality. And I think sometimes that can get lost, that, you know, if you think, well, I don't have any main rivers on my farm, I don't really need to do anything. There's always something that everyone can do, whether you're in a free draining catchment or a heavier soils catchment. For the heavier soils catchments, more of the common problems were to do with sediment loss. So the top picture on the left there, you can see, I suppose, what looks like dirty water flowing over into a drain or a river. And within that, you've got a lot of soil and a lot of sediment. And what attaches to that is the phosphorus. And phosphorus is our main issue in our freshwater bodies, especially inland. So when you've got high phosphorus coming into those areas, the ecological status is going to start to decline. So you can see a nice picture there on the right-hand side where grassland buffers have been used along the riparian zones of the river. And what these do is they act as a sediment trap, and the roots absorb the nutrients before it gets a chance to enter the pathways and get into the freshwater systems. So looking at other actions, I suppose one of the key ones that every farmer, whether you're part of a priority area for action or not, that can be taken is nutrient management planning. Soil testing and, I suppose, you know, grass measuring, they're all very, very important, especially in nitrate or nitrogen heavy zones and free draining soils. Nutrient management planning, I suppose, is probably one of the most underrated actions for water quality. Many farmers will get their soil samples, get their nutrient management plan, but how many will check it regularly and ensure that either yourself or the contractor is adhering to it? It's one of the key measures under the ASSEP programme, along with your land management. And I think, you know, if every farmer starts with something small, it should be with the nutrient management plan, because it has a huge opportunity to save you money in the long run as well. We've got huge opportunities with the EIPs coming down the tracks as well. We know that targeted action works. So the latest EPA report, although it has been broadly negative towards agriculture, the key positive within that report is showing that the actions of the ASSEP programme are working. What else can farmers do? Priorities are really important. So are you prioritising action for water quality at your farm? When you're going out each day, is it on the top of your mind, whether it be for biodiversity or water quality, to say, I'm going to try something new on the farm today that will benefit one or the other or both? I think if we change our attitudes towards our priorities and, I suppose, develop a plan, whether it be with an ASSEP advisor or with your own environmental advisor, to make these priorities, it'll, you know, make a huge difference. As I said, every farmer taking a small action is going to have a bigger impact than one farmer taking a lot of actions. PAAs versus non-PAAs, so whether you're in a priority area for action or not, action can be taken in both. Check if you're in a new priority area for action. I'm no longer part of the programme, so I don't know if the new priority areas are announced yet, but I think they were due to be released this year. So you can check on catchments.ie on the map system there to see if you are in a priority area for action. You can contact your local co-op or your local Teagasc advisor to find out as well. But there's huge information available through Teagasc, through your local agricultural advisors, in relation to water quality. So whether you're involved in the PAAs or not doesn't matter, because you can still take action. We know that there's double benefits for both water quality and biodiversity. Riparian zones are probably an action that weren't widely taken through the former GLAS scheme, but they are becoming more popular and they've got huge benefits for biodiversity. Hedgerows and trees are also really important and can have a massive benefit, especially if you have watercourses alongside your land. Planting your hedgerows and your trees strategically will have a huge impact there as well. And I suppose one of the most important things and one of the key findings I've had over the years is positive action and promotion of water quality and discussing it within your discussion groups. You know, not being afraid to say, I'm taking action for water quality, this is what I'm doing, and discussing it with your peers is probably the biggest thing that will have a huge impact. You know, the ASSA programme started in 2018 and it really took it until 2020, 2021 to get up and running. COVID did impact it as well, but the positive focus towards the programme has been huge, and the fact that it has been extended and more money has been invested in it is really positive going forward. So I suppose I'm going to encourage you to get involved where you can, check the maps, check your priority areas for action, and see, you know, through your discussion groups how many people are involved, can you encourage more to get involved, and can you get involved yourself? And I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.
And as Shane is getting ready there, I'll fire off a question to you as well. Aoife, just as like we know from Aidan's talk this morning that in terms of profitability, is it a 16% reduction in profitability on dairy farms being calculated if we go from 250 kilos down to 220 kilos of organic N as an allowance? And if we go, if the derogation is lost, then we go down to 170, which is a further 30 kilo drop. And that's where Aidan mentioned it's multiples of 16% in terms of a reduction in profitability that we're looking at. If you look in the Netherlands, there's 18,000 derogation farmers who over the next 3 years are going to be phased from down to that 170 kilos stocking or organic nitrogen level. And that's a really harsh reality for Dutch dairy farmers. So, Aoife, do you think a similar fate awaits Irish farmers here?
Oh, tough question. I suppose, look, the derogation is, as I said, it's a special request essentially by Ireland to the European Commission. And it is based solely on our trends, and our trends are declining. I would say that the latest trend was the most positive of the last few, in that the decline was still there, but it wasn't as severe. We've seen improvements in water quality, but the decline in our high status water bodies has cancelled that out. Are we in the same trajectory? I don't think it's fair to say we're in the same trajectory, because we're a very different country. We've got a huge land base and a much smaller population in comparison to the Netherlands. When you think about the Netherlands, it's effectively the size of Munster. It's got multiple agricultural sectors. So, you know, it's got more than one top sector. You've got horticulture, you've dairy, and you've got a massive floral business there as well. Whereas here, you know, we're a little bit more concentrated in our top sectors with a much bigger land base and a much smaller population. The Netherlands has 17 million people living in the size of Munster. So their issues have broadened outside of agriculture. If we do nothing, if we stay as we are, going the same way we are, absolutely we're going to be facing the loss of derogation. But I think we still have time to try and turn that trend, and that's going to be down to our land use, which is the predominant pressure on water quality, and what actions farmers are going to take and how they're going to get involved.
And Dara, you want to come in there?
Yeah. This is on.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Just to follow up on what Aoife is saying, so our water quality isn't good enough. We're still at about 55% good status. The Dutch are at 1%. So it's not surprising the Dutch lost for continuously failing to achieve any kind of upward trajectory from a water framework directive. It's not surprising that the Dutch, where you only have 1% of your surface water at good status, it's probably not that surprising that derogation is going to be removed.